of our VoiceNet is to provide a discussion forum for current events and issues, particularly medical events. And we'll act as topic presenters or members, but we have guests that are welcome to listen in or participate, log in so that we're aware you're here, and then tell us if you choose to be involved in the dialogue, and we'll add you to the list for the roundtable. So everyone national and international is welcome to join us. Drop one. This is a directed net. It works from a login list, and all calls will be made through me as the net control station. And we do have a session log using NetLogger. And if you get on NetLogger, you will see that we have a instant message window that's here. And PY2BBQ, I see, has joined us, and he's already posted a live stream link for today. So that is appreciated. Hilton, thank you for being with us again today. 4 of us so far that have checked in. And if you have any emergency traffic for the matter, you're going to have a need that's of emergency nature, please just go ahead and make a call now. Okay, this is a directed net, as I mentioned. Every Saturday, 1500 UTC through linked repeaters throughout the region, throughout the country. And today I'm originating using a DV stick and my laptop up in North Florida, flying to South Florida and Hawthorne, Florida. And I know that many of our members have different digital modalities, and we appreciate the QuadNet Array. And for the QuadNet Array to work properly as they design, realize that it's connected repeaters and connected equipment that you need to let the signal pause so that everything can synchronize along the network so that you properly are received and get transmitted. Because if it works well, you'll get transcoded, and no matter what digital mode coming in on, we'll be all be able to talk to each other. Let me let it drop one. Okay, I already know that WJD Andrew has mentioned that he's might be a short timer today due to family obligations, but he's here checked in. I also have WA1EXA and PY2BBQ checked in. Are there any other stations that are going to be limited time only or mobile that would like to go ahead and check in now? If so, please go ahead and make your call.
November 3, Indian Mike.
Okay, thank you. I had one more check-in, Keith, and 3IM. Thanks for joining us, Keith. Are you going to be just with us part of the time then, Keith? Over.
Hey, 4FL group. Yeah, I'll be just short term. Thanks.
Okay, we've got you checked in. So we'll make sure Andrew and Keith, the two of you that are short time, get a chance to make your presentations and comments at the beginning. For both of you, thank you for taking time out of your busy weekends to join us. Are there any stations now that would like just regular check-ins? We'd love to have you check in, even if you're just listening and don't want to participate in the roundtable. Go ahead and make your call to AA4FL Net Control. And 911, November 9, Oscar Mike Lima. Good morning. November 9, Oscar Mike Lima. Thank you, Howard. Good morning from Chicagoland. Are there any other stations that are monitoring now that would like to check in or just let us know you're here and that you're listening? Please go ahead and make your call now. Okay, no other check-ins at this time. We do have a note from Hilton saying that he's going to be back in about 30 minutes. So we'll move him to the end of the roundtable discussion. We appreciate him coming up and getting the YouTube server started. And WJ8B, Andrew, good morning. Why don't you go ahead and take the mic? I know you got a busy weekend or busy day here. Over. Well, I knew Andrew was going to be short time, but he must have stepped away for a minute. I'm not copying. And Keith M3IM, good morning. How are you doing today? AA4FL.
AA4FL and the Marco Group. This is N3IM. We're doing pretty good today. We have a nice sunny day out, but it's chilly. I got down into the 50s last night, so we're supposed to get up to 78 today. No rain. Going to be getting on high frequency to get in touch with the special event stations for 9/11, and have a picnic tomorrow. So, but we've been doing some work around the house, and that seems to be keeping us busy. AA4FL, this is N3IM, back to the net.
Thank you, Keith. It looks like there's going to be a quiet night tonight. It is a solemn day, being the 20th anniversary of 9/11. My son was there that day about, less than a mile away. Unfortunately, close enough to see people jumping off the towers, and very traumatized from it. Had a number of years of severe emotional problems from the experience. Of course, it pales in comparison to the pain that everyone else felt. But I was there 2 weeks later, had a pre-planned trip to his university, which was New School, which was near Washington Square Park, within one subway stop up in the World Trade Center. And that was the center for all the missing family members. Everything was pasted up all over the place, water pallets everywhere. So, again, it's a solemn day. WA1EXA, go ahead, Mark.
WA1EXA here. Yeah, we remember that day also. I was not in New York City, but I was driving up to the Adirondacks to meet some friends, and I was coming from the city, and they couldn't get back, so we ended up staying in the Adirondacks for about a week, and then they were able to get back to their homes in the Bronx. As far as here, it's been a beautiful week since it stopped raining. We got the remnants of the hurricane that devastated Louisiana and Mississippi, and that gave us, well, depending on where you were, anywhere from 4 inches to 1 inch of rain. It caused a lot of street flooding and that type of thing. We had one state trooper in the state of Connecticut that was drowned because his cruiser was washed away, and my son is in that organization, so he has to be working with that last week. But right now it is beautiful. It's a nice fall, and Cape on the Cape is great when the fall. Wait one. So that's about it. Our COVID situation is pretty much like everyone else. We're had about 1,600 new cases last week, and they're getting ready for the third shots, and everything is open, but regulated quite a bit. We're asking for vaccination records, and of course, just about everybody's wearing masks. So anyway, back to you, WA1EXA.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you for joining us today. And glad that you didn't particularly get too affected by the hurricane. I feel a lot of pain for the individuals in the New York City area that drowned, quite a few deaths, people being in basements that hadn't been able to be saved. That's something I guess they weren't expecting, and it sure wreaked havoc on the infrastructure. New Orleans is prepared; they're used to it. But water events in New York, I guess not as much, at least currently, but I'm sure they'll learn from it for the next time. AA4FL, wait one. Before we turn it over to Howard and N9OML, are there any other stations that we'd like to check in at this time? This is Medical Image Radio Council's digital voice net, AA4FL net control. Go ahead and make your call.
This is N5 RTF from our new home.
Congratulations, Chip, from the new home that survived the hurricane, even though it's on the water. That's wonderful to hear you're able to enjoy it, and you are enjoying the house, Chip. Thanks for joining us today. You know, as an aside, in terms of Mark's comments about people being masked extensively up in New England, it's not true here in the South. So just about everywhere I go, they're not masked. Even when I go to restaurants, waitresses have their nose exposed half the time. But I did go to a Florida Gator football game last weekend, and I was one of the few that wore a mask. And I was sitting close to a fraternity section, I believe. But regardless, I doubt there were 10% of people out of those 80,000 people here that were wearing masks. So we'll just have to see. I mean, they say that high school and middle school sporting events are causing infections. So we'll have to see what pro sports does. AA4FL, Medical Image Radio Council, Matt, turning it to Howard at N9OML.
Morning, Jay, everybody on the net. Nothing much from Chicago. Situation remains the same. Seasonal weather, no major changes in the COVID situation. Really no new information. If you watch the news, same shootings, largely the same COVID numbers. They're waiting to see what will happen with the schools. And no big changes. Like I say, we have seasonal weather and dodge the fires, dodge the big storms. It's just been status quo empty. So I'll give it back to the net. Sorry I don't have any brilliant information to discuss, but I did want to listen in and participate as appropriate. And N9OML, back to net control.
Well, thank you for being here with us again, Howard. You're always a regular with a lot of enthusiasm. Of course, sporting events, you're on the north side or northwest side, I guess, of Chicago, so you're probably more of a Cubs fan if you're a baseball fan, and it's the White Sox this year that are going to be in the playoffs. I'm kind of torn between being a Tampa fan and a Red Sox fan, but really any team that's playing the Yankees for me is the one that I usually root for. But certainly being a Red Sox fan for years and that. I did have one patient. Son played for the Red Sox and the Yankees and Tampa. So all the three teams in the division that I follow closely. Are there any other, let's go back to Chip here, N5 RTF. Good morning, Chip.
Well, good morning. Terry and I are sitting out on the screen porch looking at the water. Beautiful day. It's fall down here. Of course, that means, that it's in the lower 80s. I had an interesting thought. We were talking about people in different parts of the country. In the South, of course, we've never worn anything over our faces. Unless you're in medicine, you've never worn a mask in your whole life. I wonder if people who grew up in the Northeast, the North, who are used to wearing scarves and mufflers and ski masks and things like that in the wintertime, whether maybe that's just makes it a little easier to put a mask on. Somebody will have to answer that. N5RTF.
Well, we have a few Northerners here. We let Mark get a chance at answering this first. WA1EXA.
Well, WA when you say. I guess that's a theory. I don't think anybody has thought of that. We normally don't wear too many mufflers and things like that unless it's like below zero and has a wind chill of like -5 or 10. But normally in the wintertime it doesn't get that cold all the time. So I don't know. I really don't know if that caused a big difference. I think it's probably more of a political thing than anything else. As far as the Northeast is concerned, we're pretty solidly Democratic, although some states aren't like New Hampshire. But other than that, I can't give you any answer. Back to you.
Thank you, Mark. Howard, being from Chicago, which can get pretty brutally cold at times. What's your take on that? AA4SL.
We have some people that wear scarves or masks during the winter time. I think it's probably pretty similar to the compliance we get now. Some people choose to, some don't. My hunch is that you get Southerners wearing masks over their faces if they came up here when it's below zero. As probably everybody else. But I don't know if that's never really thought about it, never looked into it. But different kind of mask, different breathing effects. And even here, we're getting mixed compliance. The requirement sounds good and solid, but compliance varies greatly. And I don't know, that's not control.
Thank you, Howard. AA4SL, net control. If somebody grew up in the South, like Chip, although Miami sometimes can resemble the Northeast in terms of the people that are there, or South America, that is, but in terms of the humidity here in the Deep South, I'm in the same latitude as Chip pretty much here in the Gainesville area, along the I-10 corridor. And for being at that game and having to wear the mask even the 7:30 game, I just wouldn't have even given it a chance during the day shift. I think the humidity was a killer. And having a mask was definitely cumbersome. But I don't think that's why people didn't wear it. Could be, but they were just having a good old time like any other time. And they were just ready to have a return to the normality of the game time experience. But outside of a football game, certainly that doesn't necessarily hold sway for everything else that happens in life, which is not so demanding for wearing a mask. So back to you, Chip. M5RTS, AA4SL net control.
Well, that's about all I have to say. Of course, I've been wearing a mask since I was a teenager working in a hospital. So it's not that unusual for me. But I know that this was probably the first time a lot of people in Louisiana ever wore masks in their whole lives, and they, other than Mardi Gras cherries, yes, but those are a different kind of mask. But we had to teach people, how to put it on. Have their nose sticking out or open it at the bottom, or there's also it's totally nullified any benefit from the way they were wearing them. N5RTF.
Thanks for pointing that out, Chip. When I was in dental school in the late 70s, pre-AIDS, the wet finger dentist was the norm. No one wore gloves unless you were doing surgery. I don't remember about masks. I mean, we had Hep B vaccines already at the time, and that's what we were concerned about. But I honestly don't remember. Maybe, I mean, all the particulate matter that was flying around that you didn't want to breathe in. Hopefully we did. I'll have to go back and look at photographs. I tend to think we did. It's just the most we went without. Andrew, I am Keith. Are you still with us? Would you like to offer some input? Go ahead.
Yeah, the 88-4FL, this is N3IM. Yeah, well, my experience is much like Chip's. I wore a mask so much through my medical experiences in residency. When I did residency, it was the beginning of the AIDS epidemic. And on through, and then when I went to the emergency room, of course, masks were used quite frequently, as were other garments and so forth for doing lines and so forth. So my experience has been that I've worn a mask. My wife had no trouble with the mask when we had to wear them. Out here in rural Pennsylvania, I'm not seeing many people with masks on, even though our governor would like to have it that way. But I don't know what it's like in the cities because I haven't been to Philadelphia or Pittsburgh recently. Back to the net. This is N3IM.
Thank you, Keith. AA4FL net control for the Medical Amateur Radio Council Digital VoiceNet. Are there any other stations that are monitoring who'd like to check in and give some input on the subject? If so, go ahead and make your calls net control now.
Papa Yankee 2, Bravo, Bravo, Quebec. Good morning, everybody. Hilton from São Paulo, Brazil.
Welcome back, Hilton. I did get your instant message here on being away for a little while before returning here to the net. Thank you for hosting that. We were talking about mask usage, and in case you hadn't been monitoring, Chip is here from the southern United States, New Orleans, and he just brought up the question as to whether or not, because of the fact that we grew up in an area that was so warm and from weather standpoint, we're not used to wearing scarves or masks or anything above the neckline or above, if whether or not that's one of the reasons why we don't tend to wear the masks when they're suggested or required. What is it like in Brazil in terms of people adhering to the request for mask usage? PY2, BBQ, AA4, net control.
Okay, AA4FL and the group, PY2, BBQ, Hilton, São Paulo. Yes, that's a very interesting point. We see that, especially here in São Paulo, we see most of the people using masks, even in the streets, not only in closed places, but even in the streets, most of the people are still using masks, and there was a very good adhesion of the people in this regard, but it may not be true in other parts of the country, but at least here in São Paulo, which is the biggest city in the country, we see that the population is very aware of the importance of using masks and being vaccinated as well. We have reached almost 100% of the adult population is already vaccinated, and half of the adult population receives the 2 doses of the vaccines. And what we have seen is a good control of the epidemic. the number of daily deaths dropped to in the whole country to an average of 500 deaths. You know that it peaked 4,200, and so it's much better. Most of the beds in the hospitals that were for COVID patients are now available for regular patients. So it's going to a good direction at least for, at this time here in Brazil. We started to vaccinate the older people with the third shot. Last week it was for those 90 and older, and now it will start the 80 and older, and the adolescents over 12 years old are being vaccinated as well. So back to you, A4FL, PY2BBQ.
Thank you for mentioning that, Hilton. I haven't seen the latest here. It was supposed to be September 20th for individuals, but I think for Criterion we're planning on being 8 months after the second dose. And that's the last I heard. Well, one discussion we did have last week, I know I asked you, Hilton, because someone had mentioned the Mu variant. I think it was actually Andrew. I don't know if Andrew's back right now. We'll give him a chance if he is. He was on earlier. And we did hear, at least in the public sphere this week, a few times about it. Not that they really knew anything about the variant other than acknowledging it came from Colombia. Are you with us here, Andrew, for a follow-up on last week? AA4SL Net Control. Okay, Andrew did mention that he had to leave the net here. He had something in the family he had to do. It was a priority this weekend. You can't ignore your wife's birthday, that's for sure. I'm going to be there with Andrew here on Tuesday when Randy has her birthday. So, Hilton, last week you didn't seem to have any familiarity at all with the fact that there was another variant, a new variant out of Colombia. Has anything come up in the last week in Brazil that has made an appearance in Brazil yet? Or?
Oh, negative, Jay. I didn't see anything related to a new variant coming from Colombia so far. Now that the Delta variant became really prevalent here in Brazil, so even if we have a more effective variant, it will take a while until it comes to Brazil. We know that in South America, if you get 10 countries with worse, but with higher mortality per million people, 4 of them at least are in South America, and the higher rates are in Peru, and then Brazil, Colombia, and Argentina. And we expected to have a more dangerous variant from Peru, but it didn't show up. So no, the answer is no. I don't know anything about a new variant from Colombia and the hazard from that. Back to you, A4FL, PY2BBQ.
Thank you, Hilton, for your input on the subject. Well, what I heard this week in the public sphere did not really offer any specificity other than they showed a map, it looked like around 16 states that had cases. They do have concerns as to, as you said, the dangerousness of the variant, and the concern was whether or not it was an escape mutant or totally able to evade the immunity from the vaccine. So they interviewed Dr. Fauci, and he said, no, I mean, we're 99% Delta, and that's what we're concerned about here. But no one's nervous about it on the surface, but it warranted some attention. Does anybody else here would like to comment on that particular variant, what they may be aware of? I'll go ahead and make a list here. Take your calls.
And I don't know.
And I know I'm go ahead, Howard.
I read a article on Netscape that interviewed two virologists who were discussing it, and I guess who labeled it kind of under their level as a little concern. They have two different ways they word it, and this was kind of the one for surveillance purposes. The purpose for that assignment was the fact that it's made up of, I guess, surviving virus of the Alpha and Delta variant, some components of the Beta variant, and that it might develop as a variant that would be less susceptible to vaccination or the effective vaccination we've been using. But both of the docs that were interviewed, one was PhD type, were not real strong on that. They all kind of said we're just going to have to watch and see. And there was 100% agreement that Delta's the variant of concern, and that the current measures, regular vaccination and masking and distancing, would still be the order of the day. So they expressed, some very limited concern, mostly along the lines of keep an eye on it. But Delta ruled the day as far as what they were worried about. And I don't know. I'll try and pop that out to you in a second or two if I can find it again.
Thank you, Howard. I see that Andrew's back, WJAB, so if you take the mic and talk about the new variant, that would be wonderful, Andrew. Thank you. Over.
I just jumped in. Had my son from California call, and because they're on California time, of course, and this is when they get up in the morning. So. But back there, I tried to find a little bit more on the new variants, but really everything that I mentioned last week was from one source, and it primarily was in Peru, but they have seen cases in Los Angeles and a few other larger cities in the U.S. And they don't, at that point, on this article, they did not have enough data to say where it stands on infectivity, vaccine susceptible, etc. So, back to that from WJB.
Well, thank you, Howard. Well, thank you, Mark. We'll see. Boy, let me get everything right here. Andrew, thank you. Thank you to everyone. We'll see what happens here over the next week or two. We do have an epidemiologist that's offered to help with the ether at the University of Florida. I quite frequently read her being quoted in the press. I believe she's been quoted well beyond just the Florida media outlets. And I knew her and know her because her father was a ham. He's now deceased. Had donated some equipment to the university. So she was willing to consider waiting on a submission. Yeah, it's hard doing an ether. I purposely don't really write the issue until the 20th, in the last 10 days of the month. I go ahead and I'll do research and find information and sort of templated out, but in terms of filling in the details, it's 10 days is already old news, just going from until the end of the month. But that will be a project here for about a week from now. Are there any stations that have not checked in yet that would like to check in? This is AA4FL Net Control for the Medical Amateur Radio Council Digital Voice Net. Go ahead and make your call. Hey, no additional calls heard. Again, this seemed to be a very solemn day, a very quiet day for the net. Here being 9/11, 20 years post 9/11, and the original 9/11, the one of national trauma. And I will let everybody consider whether or not they want to make us have a second round. If there's any topics that you would like to discuss that we haven't already for the week, otherwise I'm going to move the net towards closing it. Are there any other additional comments before we bring the net to a close? AA4FL Net Control. Well, thank you to everyone for joining us. It's always good to keep up with your friends and value, of course, your commentary and your input. And thank you once again for being with us, but not only for us, but for the Quadnet Array that makes all this happen, the transcoding that allows us to talk to each other in the digital modalities. I doubt very highly if we were using HF that all of us could have a conversation at this level of involvement and engagement. And engagement is something that we really do need on some of the subjects we're talking about net relays and secondhand passed on messages of fragmented natures. We certainly value and love Grand Rounds of the Air. It's our heritage. And it's not only a tradition, it is effective, but for the purposes of this discussion, this is more of a roundtable where everyone needs to have technological equal footing. I'll say 7-3 to all, and I will catch everyone next weekend. Have a wonderful week and have a moment of silence here today in memory of those that lost their lives at the World Trade Center back 20 years ago. AA4FL, Net Control, calling the net to a close and saying 7-3.